This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Welcome to Teacher Talk Radio. Today you're here with your hosts, Krupa and Nazya, for your Sunday lunch. Today we will be talking about harnessing your power. We'll include a Wish Me You Earlier moment, followed by our Sunday Serenity moment.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Hi everyone.
Hi
everyone. This is our first show, Sunday lunch with Krupa and Nazya. Welcome. We are live, so there might be some hiccups on the way, but we hope you can bear with us. We did do a little bit of practicing prior to coming on the show, but when you're live, it's always a little bit different, isn't it? So we thought we'd start off with intros, because many of you probably haven't heard of us or haven't spoken to us. We hope that there's people joining in, and we look forward to getting to speak to any of you that tune in to us. So let's get started. So I would like to introduce my co-host, Krupa. Krupa started her journey as a science teacher in a large maintained school. She then moved on to head of year, and that's where she, I suppose, found her power and realized that she could make amazing connections with staff and students. She then moved on to an assistant headship and in a special school, and that's where we met each other. And she will probably say that that moment in time was probably one of her biggest learning curves. And pretty soon after, she moved into headship. Staff viewed her as a kind, caring, creative individual, and they loved working with her. And then Krupa decided to go into a different direction towards post-19 and became a director. And I suppose she continues on that journey, navigating the muddy waters of the education sector. And I think I'm right here. I think she's found her passion in coaching and consulting now. And yeah, I mean, that's just like in a snapshot. I'm pretty sure there was probably lots more happening in her life.
I think you have covered me well. Thank you so much, Nazya. And without further ado, Nazya, where do I begin with you? So, Nazya, how long have you been actually in education overall?
I'm not good. Well, I am good with numbers, but right now I can't think. Since 2006. How many years is that?
Mate, that's a lot of years. So, Nazya started off her journey and has actually throughout this whole time been within special needs. Am I correct in saying that?
Mm-hmm.
And you've moved from a local maintained school. You have worked with, doing your NQT year there, and then you grew into head of department, leading really important work with complex learners. And I know we had several conversations around how difficult it was to navigate that whilst being a parent and whilst trying to grow your own, and you sort of learn your professional identity. And that continues to be a journey for everyone, I think. And I think this is quite poignant in this conversation that we're going to have today around finding your power. Is actually, you don't just find it and let it go. It's a journey, and it evolves, and you evolve with finding that search, I guess. So you then have gone on to work an assistant head in a larger special needs school. And within that, you redesigned the whole curriculum, project-based learning, upped the qualifications, broke ceilings in that regard. And then now, I mean, this is the exciting part, is what you're doing now. You're founding head of an independent school, and working with young people that have suffered trauma, at risk, or have been NEET, so not in employment, education, or in training, and are working towards, or have an EHCP. So that's a really special area that you're working with. And so I'm really looking forward to speaking with you around your journey in that particular role.
Yeah, maybe on another show.
All right. Okie dokes. So anyway, how are you? How's your weekend been?
Well, just to let everyone know, this weekend we were celebrating Eid, which was the end of Ramadan. So anyone listening, Ramadan Mubarak or Eid Mubarak. And yeah, it was really, really fun. We prepared a life-size games night. So this is the new thing out on Instagram, isn't it? It's everywhere on TikTok and Instagram, where people just like have created these games, and you just play them with one another. So it's not a board game; it's an actual game that you make. So there's a range of games that we played, things like stacking cups and using chopsticks to pick up dice and things like that. And there was 14 of us, all like full age range between 5 and 45.
Nice.
I'll tell you one thing though, the 5-year-old was so much more better at probably most of those games than a 45-year-old. It must have been those nimble fingers, seriously.
But it does say something about sort of that element of being conditioned. And actually, when you're conditioned, you sort of lose skills somewhat, whereas this young 5-year-old is able to just adapt and go with the flow and run with that. And that says a lot around, aging, but also actually how your brain operates.
Bad knees, Krupa.
I didn't want to say it out loud. Here we are. Okay.
So this leads us onto our why, and actually our topic of conversation, which is about finding and harnessing your power. So why we decided to go and just start becoming radio presenters. Well, this is radio present one show. Let's see how we get on moving forward. Okay, so why did you, Krupa?
So for me, I think I'm at a really interesting point in my life. All I know about me is my educational journey, and so I'm at the point where I'm really digging deep, really trying to find out what else am I, what else can I do, and I've started this journey, and we've spoken again at length around knowing how we can sort of transfer these skills from teaching, from headship, from leadership, from all these roles that we do, the tangible skills, and actually use it outside of our day-to-day. So for me, I'm really keen and really excited to hear from listeners around what they do, but also the skills that they can transfer outside of the classroom, outside of the school building, or virtual school, and what they do. Really, really interested to hear that.
For me, I was just thinking about this actually on my journey here to yours, was about when you go out of your comfort zone. I was listening I follow Steve Bartlett on LinkedIn, and he always puts these weekly quotes on. I think it's part of his kind of social media kind of strategy, and there was one quote that he put on about going out of your comfort zone, and that he said that just changing the way you look at going out of your comfort zone and reframing that to a growth moment or a growing moment. So I was just thinking, why are we doing this, or why am I doing this? And I just thought, what, this is me coming out of my comfort zone.
I love that.
Hopefully it'll become a growing moment or a growth moment for us or for me.
I love that. I really, really do.
And then the other side of it was obviously that, we have such a passion for so many things, and we do spend an awful lot of time talking about different things in the education sector and our experiences and things like that. And we thought it'd be really nice to share a different perspective, a unique perspective. We're both Southeast Asian, even though we're not from the same religion, we come from different, same different kind of slightly different cultures. We both have different experiences working within education, and some of our previous roles, and growing up as well. So we think we bring a slightly different perspective on things, don't we?
Absolutely,
Sometimes,
and I think and I'm really pleased that you've brought that lens of DEI in, and I think it's important to acknowledge who we are, our cultural similarities or differences, but also to think about how we can start making this feel comfortable and really acknowledging what that feels like, how we bring this into the classroom, because we talk about relatability, don't we? And we know that learners learn best when teachers and practitioners are relatable. So when you're relatable, for me, I've walked into many classrooms, and you walk into a room and you see these young, wonderful faces, and they're just so eager. They're so curious, and they ask the best questions. Where are you from? What did you eat, miss? What was it like growing up? And was it, someone asked me if I grew up during a time when TV was not in color, which is interesting in itself. However, I think there is loads here that we can talk about. Where do we begin? Where should we start?
I think where we should start from is, what does finding your power mean to you?
So I've started writing a list.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm at the point where I'm looking to see how I can use my knowledge. I've got this real need to talk about unconscious bias, talk about my growth as a young woman trying to live two cultures, a very Indian British culture, and then having to go into school and also as a professional, and how I navigate the two and find that sweet spot, that blend of being relatable, being real, but also being really authentic. And I remember finding that really hard during my NQT years. So that's for those that are doing the ECTs, it's your ECT years. Finding that really hard to navigate, and I found myself quite lost, if I'm honest. So I'm starting on a macro level, and I'm looking at all the skills that I'm learning and have learnt over a period of time, but also how they transfer outside of the classroom. So we look at data all the time, but we never see ourselves as data analysts. We are able to sit and really truly actively listen to colleagues and to young people. So we offer this space of being a real listening ear, being that empathy that comes with that. Where have I written that anywhere? So there's several skills that I think I am now actively writing down, and actually how can I use that to navigate my actual skill set that's beyond the classroom, and where I can use that elsewhere. How about you?
So I was looking at it because I work in a trauma-informed school, and for a lot of our students that have kind of lost their way, have kind of lost their love for learning, lost their love for life in some ways, a lot of the times we spend thinking about how we can help them, how we can motivate them, engage them in learning, and so there's a lot of work that we do within the staff team around the neuroscience behind the power of the mind, and how we can help them appreciate and understand the power that our young people have, so that they can then take back control of their life. And that's the way I've been kind of viewing this whole thing of harnessing your power. And if you think about what power is, this is not power. This is not like I'm not talking about like the ego, like control, or autocratic power. I'm not talking about that type of power. I'm talking about our personal power, our inner strength. And a lot of decisions that we make in life either come from that place of personal power, or they come from a place of fear.
Very true.
So if you look back at your life and think about all the decisions you've made in your life, what was the overriding factor in that decision making? Was it from a place of personal power, or was it from a place of fear? And I can look back and I can think, for example, like when I chose, I go back even to the point of when my A levels.
Yeah. God, yeah.
When I look back at my A levels, the A levels I chose was not because I had a passion for those A levels. I loved geography. I got an amazing grade at geography in my GCSE. Why didn't I not do that for my A levels? Because
Good question. Why?
because it wasn't recognized. South in when I went home and I said, I want to choose these A levels, everyone looked at me like, well, why do you want to do geography?
And what are you going to do with that?
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
in the field somewhere.
Yeah,
It's not just
yeah.
that. Absolutely.
So out of fear, I just did what was expected of me, and kind of like my power got hidden, and I hid behind my culture and the expectations that my family had of me, and the controlling factor in that section, the decision making factor for me in that case was my fear. And so therefore,
and did you ever feel like you could tell anyone? Like, was there anyone in your school that you could say, "Sir, Miss, like, I know I'm so interested, I love this subject, but mum and dad or my community are sort of don't recognize this. I'm stuck in this sort of medium space."
So no, I don't think I did really, because there's no one I could relate to.
Yeah.
All the teachers were white, Caucasian. There was one Asian teacher in my school, who was a textiles teacher, by the way, and the cooking teacher.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, so I just felt like no one would be able to relate if I went to them and said that I had a pressure on me on the type of A levels I should choose.
Yeah.
But anyway, I ended up choosing something like business economics. I hate business economics. I had never done business economics in my life.
Excellent.
Why did I choose that as an A level? And I failed it. I failed that A level, Krupa.
Yeah.
So that decision I made was out of fear. And I think about, for example, I was in my first teaching job. I was there for over 12 years. Well, 12 years I was there for.
Wow. Yeah.
And I keep thinking, why did I make that decision of staying there? It was a toxic environment. Why was I there for such a long time? Out of fear. Because because I felt like, at least even though it's toxic, I still have a balance in my life. So therefore, my fear of not having that balance where I'm not able to give time to my children. I'm spending hours and hours marking whatever. I didn't need to do that because I'd been there for such a long time. It was, if I had stepped out of my comfort zone, that would have been me making a decision out of power, because my gut was telling me I need to leave.
I hear you. I really do hear you, and that really resonates and hits strong for me too. So I think that whole idea of staying in that post for a long time, especially during really vulnerable years like having children, and feeling like you don't want to tip the balance and so on and so forth. But actually, I feel that I had huge expectations that were unsaid. So I don't know if it's the same for the Pakistani community, but most certainly for our Indian community, is that your children come first, of course, like everywhere else, but it's about making sure you're really present and you're giving them the very best, and your decisions are made and centered around them, absolutely, but you almost can lose yourself in just playing this role as mother. But you've actually spent longer time being Krupa or Nazya or whoever you are. You spend how many years to get to this point. You're then choosing to have children or not, or whatever that looks like, but falling into this complacent it's not even consensus, it's just this complacent road, and it does happen with fear. It really does. So you didn't feel like you could tell anyone, you absolutely hated it, and then what happened?
I don't know. I just feel I do feel like, I mean, then I went down this like that dirty road of doing all the subjects, and that people or going down that path of getting a career that was good but actually wasn't good for me, but it was just a good career to go into, good sector to go into. So I went into the IT sector and became a software engineer. And so because obviously everyone had said to me at that time, IT sector is really, it's the place to be. But the point is that regardless of what path I went down to, I have got to a stage now where, especially in the last 2 to 3 years, where I need to start harnessing my personal power.
For sure.
I need to stop making decisions out of fear. And we do make those decisions out there. We say, oh, should we start that business? What's it gonna happen? Should we leave this job? Should we change careers? All of the things that are stopping us from doing those things that we know aren't right for us is the decision made from fear. And so therefore for me it's like I need to start following my gut, because my gut, when I start make a decision based on like what I know is good for me and my gut, that kind of gives me a sense of energy in me.
Energy giving, absolutely, yeah.
And then I know that actually this is the right decision that I need to make, isn't it? It's like,
and
this is the right decision for me.
It's just taking that first step and sort of thinking about how you remove that, or actually I think it's acknowledging the fear or managing that self-doubt, and then jotting down what is it that you can do and what's reasonable. And actually I find when I go through that process, I'm always drawn back to function. I've got to pay for my mortgage. I've got to make sure there's a certain amount of funds or whatever is available to make this sustainable, to make it work. But that isn't driving the passion, if that makes sense. And that's where I think many practitioners, and you see the huge walkout with amazing practitioners leaving education now because of workload, because of well-being, not actually seeking or being active in enabling teachers and practitioners to feel well. It's really sad, but then you've got a range of skills that can absolutely change direction, that can really change the narrative of education. And I feel like we talk loads about it, but it's about how do we make that power come through in a tangible way, and do it, and just do it.
And there was another thought I had in my head about the neuroscience behind it, and that was to do with the brain. So when your gut is telling you to do the right thing and the brain stopping you from doing it, and the reason why the brain stops you from doing it is because of the amygdala. The amygdala like makes you go into like survival mode. So yeah, and that kind of puts those negative thoughts in your head about, what if this is not going to work out? Oh, should I risk it?
All right, let's play with that idea. So what? It doesn't work out. Yeah. What do we do as humans? What is it that we have to do? We've got fight or flight. We have the adrenaline that's going to push us through. So the truth is, realistically, you will find a way. And we have got networks, we have got connections that can support us, or there are systems out there that can support us. But we still are so conditioned, and that's what it comes down to, doesn't it? It's that, again, coming back to unconscious bias, is that how our experiences, our fear of not having or not meeting certain expectation or whatever that means. I think for us, there's a whole load of intersections that we can talk about, but we'll save that for another day. But how can we break that and feel confident in breaking that?
There was a example that I think was it something I saw, or was it on a podcast? It was a while ago, a long time ago, and he gave an example of he put two chairs. I think it was a stage. He put two chairs on the stage, and he told somebody to go and sit on one chair. He's like, one chair I want you to sit down on, and he's like, I want you to tell me all your doubts. Like all your doubts and fears. And the guy sat down and he was just rambling off all his fears and doubts and worries and anxieties. And then he said, on this chair, once you've taken out all your worries and fears and anxieties, I want you to go and sit on another chair, and I want you to tell me all your ambitions and what you want to do.
Love that.
So then he went and sat down on this other chair, and started saying, yes, I want to achieve this with my life, and I want to be happy, and I want to do this, and I want to do that. But slowly, as he was talking, he slowly started saying negative things. So started saying things like, oh, but I can't do that because of this, or maybe I really want to do it, but I'm not sure if it will work out. And so it went slowly into the negative thought. And that's because that's your brain. Again, your brain has a natural tendency it goes into survival. It has a natural tendency to give you that doubt, to give you that negative those negative thoughts. And so when you start, so it's so important as part of harnessing our power and finding our power is to be intentional.
Yes.
Intentional with the things that we do.
Absolutely.
Because and when you're intentional, you can really quieten those intrusive thoughts and that intrusive self-talk which is negative.
And often not true, because it's not the reality. That's just your reality at that point in time. I think there is some value in just stopping and taking notes of that. Is, your mind does play tricks on you sometimes, especially when you're in a place of vulnerability, or when you feel like things are outside of your control. And so thinking about how we can encourage that. And I think about encouraging that within the classroom. I don't think I ever had a conversation in any of my lessons around how to manage significant change in life. It's always, if you get your GCSEs, you'll get really good grades. If you get really good grades, then you'll get a really good job. If you get a really good job, well, then what? Then you'll have a family. And then if you have a family, it was all these big, huge milestones. But I don't feel that I sort of was well equipped, and almost learning it now has been a journey, continues to be a journey on really bringing that into the classroom. So my next question for you, Nazya, is how do you bring that into the classroom?
Okay. And there's lots of ways. One of the ways which I think I touched on earlier was to do with explaining and showing to our young people the power that they have.
Yes.
So we are quite intentional in when we talk to our students. If they've had a tricky time or a challenging moment, we will literally, during our restorative conversations, we will sit down with them and we will talk through with them, and I will literally draw a human being. Normally it turns out it looks like a blob or a stick figure because I'm so awful at drawing. But we will literally go through the motions of what happens to your body when you're in a flight, fight, freeze response mode. We are literally talking through the science behind the biology and the neurology of themselves, in order to help them to understand, why they've made the decisions they've made, but why they can actually change.
Just reframing the power of changing habits. And you're right, I like that that's something you actually do. You have the SEMH sessions in your on the timetable, and it's been an absolute joy to witness that. But I think when we have that with the young people, and we're talking about the amount of data, the data that comes through all of our senses consistently, and then how your physiology identifies that, gives you a response, but how often we just bypass that and we keep going with these thoughts. And what's actually happening is your body is telling you, stop, slow down, think this through, stop, slow down, think this through. Because actually what's happening is the amount of data that's coming through is overwhelming. It's really hard, especially when it stems from a place of trauma or a place of difficulty. And I think that language around that is so effective, and we need to be bringing that earlier in education, and we need to be bringing that within the sessions like you have with well-being and project-based learning and so on and so forth. But talking about developing self-awareness and really, really exploring that, because those are the skills that I really do believe enables learners to grow up to be a little bit more courageous, because they're at one with themselves almost, or working towards that when they become adults. I hope that they are able to identify when they need to take that break, the mastering themselves, and being able to make those decisions as they regulate. Really interesting.
Right, we're going to go into a news break. We'd love for anyone to call in, or you can text us and join in with the conversation about finding and harnessing your power. We'll be back.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Cat Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! Visit johncatbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
A report on the BBC website focuses on Ofsted's response to recent criticisms following the death of Ruth Perry. Ms Perry died while waiting for a report which downgraded her school. Ruth Perry's sister, Professor Julia Waters, wanted a full review to take place, but Ofsted has announced only some changes. Chief Inspector Amanda Spielman said the organisation would continue to listen to try to make improvements. She outlined the changes in a statement, and they include looking at how inspectors can return more quickly to schools who have work to do on safeguarding, otherwise performing well, in order to reflect improvements in their judgments, making the complaints process more responsive, which would see issues being addressed during inspection rather than afterwards, and holding briefings for head teachers where schools have not been inspected for a long time. In response, Professor Waters said the inspectorate was totally insensitive to the situation and was far from anything like a meaningful response to growing calls for reform. Education Secretary Gillian Keegan said standards on keeping children safe would not be watered down. The TES reports on concerns over school absence rates and the impact it could have on upcoming GCSE exams. Fears have been raised over the exam regulator's plan to return grade standards to pre-pandemic levels for the 2023 summer series, when a TES analysis reveals that absence is still 70% higher than before the COVID lockdowns. Year 11 students have missed 10.7% of sessions, equivalent of half a day at school, during the autumn and spring terms, according to DFE figures and FFT Data Lab information. The absence rate amongst disadvantaged Year 11 students is more than double that of their non-disadvantaged peers. Former Schools Minister and Chair of the Commons Education Select Committee, Robin Walker, said the findings were of a grave concern. Exam regulator Ofqual has promised some protection against any impact of COVID disruption to learning, but has not shared details. Despite a government drive on attendance, the objective to return attendance to normal pre-pandemic levels has not been met. School leaders and MAT CEOs have expressed concern at the lack of consideration being given to high absence rates. They also acknowledged that many had not anticipated the difficulties currently being faced. The Guardian featured an article on vaping and the concerns many have over the potential future impact on young people. With many schools acknowledging the difficulties they experience in dealing with vaping amongst children and young people, and research suggesting that pupils as young as 9 are admitting to vaping at least once, the article focuses on the downsides to what was initially presented as a more healthy alternative to smoking. The rise of the fruity vape flavours with enticing names such as Blueberry Blast have encouraged young people to believe they are harmless. According to some, they reduce your appetite, making them more enticing to some users. What isn't often talked about is the addictive element and the fact that many of the products, although not all, contain nicotine. Some youngsters who have never smoked have found themselves addicted to nicotine anyway. A recent study indicates that up to 15% of all 11 to 15-year-olds in the UK are now vaping, and the habit is proving just as difficult to kick as all other addictions, including smoking. Finally, many head teachers have called on Schools Minister Nick Gibb to drop what they describe as a misguided policy, which means schools must open for at least 32.5 hours per week. In a letter to the Minister, leaders of the two main head teachers' unions warn that since guidance on the proposal has not been provided, many have assumed it is not going ahead. The letter requests a minimum of a delay until September 2024. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Welcome back. Today we are talking about finding and harnessing your power. We had a little bit of an intro in which we talked about our perspectives on what it means to harness our power. Now we want to move on to, from a systematic level and a macro level, how we can harness our power. So some tips and ways forward in ways in which we can identify how just identify ways in which we can find our power and then harness it. So macro level, Krupa.
Okay, so I've got a bit of a checklist, and I think there is some self-work that needs to be identified at this point in time. So I think looking at sort of some steps towards your own or seeking your own personal power would be to sit with yourself and do this frequently. It won't come straight away. It may take a while, and just showing a personal experience of my own when things are chaotic in your personal world, and then it's also rather busy in your professional world, is being able to sit with yourself and sieve. And it's okay to cry and shout and what, all of those natural feelings that happen, but then to sit with yourself and jot what's going down. So to acknowledge and declare what's going on a piece of paper. So writing down where you're at and where it may just be feelings to begin with, but then you can then dig deeper and think where and why are those things happening. I think also replacing negative self-talk with positive affirmations is really important.
Yeah, so those are great for the micro level. So from the sense of self, yeah. So what about macro level? So let's take a step back. Imagine you've got a department, you've got your school, the people that you work with, your colleagues. How do you harness your power in those circumstances? So let's look at it from an operational or systematic or strategic level, or even from a cultural level. How do we enhance the power of the team, and how do we harness our own power in doing so? So one of the thoughts that was going through my head was to do with identifying your strengths and identifying the strengths of your team.
Some great tools out there. Yeah, absolutely.
So when we're recruiting, I know as a head, when I'm looking to recruit, I'm looking for certain traits, certain characteristics, and I'm also looking for certain strengths within that person that will then fill the gaps in my current team. Yeah. So and then one of the things we do within our team is that we may do things like where we share our strengths. When we have team meetings, we share our strengths, or we may use different types of like psychometric testing and things to share our tests. So I know a popular one right now, well, has been for years, is Belbin, the Belbin profile, and that's to do with it's like team roles. So it helps you to identify when you and your team do the Belbin questionnaire. It helps all the individuals identify their behavioral strengths so that they can better understand how they can contribute to the team as a whole and become a more effective team. And I think that a way that that also helps is that it helps you identify your team members' strengths, but in a unbiased, kind of impartial way, and then you can when to help them because you know where their areas of development are, but you also know what your areas of development are, so you know when to ask for help. And that is quite empowering as a team, actually. I remember, when we did another profile, didn't we? We did the leadership value spiral.
Yes. And that's probably one of the best quality one I think we have used so far, because what it offers is the micro and the macro. And therefore it holds value for every member that partakes. And so that was really interesting because it talks about the positive skills and traits and values, because it's based upon experience and so on and so forth, but it also shows you and encourages you as individually but also collectively to think about your shadows and to think about areas of development. But I think in terms of it being useful, it needs to be done and appreciated in understanding that the idea is that is not a stayed label. You don't stay in that label, you don't stay as that one person. It's a starting point, but it offers a language. So if you're looking for somebody that is, quite innovative, that would show up in these profiles. If you're looking for someone that's going to offer structure and process, all really important skill sets. But actually, if you have a team full of people that are, really into processes and structures, which is important, actually, where is the innovation? Where is the system balance, or the creativity that breaks away from that? And that's why I think what you're talking about is incredibly important. So the audit to have with your team to begin with is essential. And I think it doesn't have to be a costly task, Nazia. So you could sort of have your own that you have in school, where you think about what is it that makes a a a meaningful team that's going to serve the young people, and looking at those skill sets that you look for and designing something that's really bespoke. And then, if I know funding is really tight, I know that it's really hard to even, I hear leaders all the time who I coach that just do not have the funding to do these things, but they know it's absolutely crucial, that will help with breaking barriers and will bring this sense of momentum back into relationships, and therefore intervention, and then having the impact that they're looking for. So it doesn't have to be a costly task. It could be done in-house, and it can be done really thoughtfully if it's done with a team that buy in and are able to really be vulnerable with you. And it comes back to connection, it comes back to rapport, and how we do that.
So when you're able to truly identify where your strengths lie, the part you play within the team that you work with, that actually that is quite empowering as an individual, and it builds self-awareness. And I was listening to a podcast once, and they were talking about superpowers, and they were saying, what if we could have a superpower, what would it be? Someone he's like some kind of neuroscientist or something, or mindset coach or something, can't remember. He said something along the lines of, to be honest, if I could have a superpower, and if I wish everyone had this superpower, it was a superpower of self-awareness. Because knowing, and understanding your, where your, why things happen, where that is coming from, your intentions, your values, being aware of your surroundings, being aware of, like, being able to read the room. All these things are part and parcel of self-awareness, being really mindful of your triggers and your barriers and your challenges, but also, how you can find your way through them, how you can navigate your way through that.
So here's a question. So you're able to do that as a leader. How have you designed that and brought that into with your current SLT, for example, and your wider schools, team? So it's great that you have that, but actually it's only really going to be strong and meaningful if there is that culture that's been put through. So how have you been able to bring that in and make that part of developing self-awareness with your team?
It's been a range of things, actually. What I will say, though, is that these kind of 360 profiling and questioning, and there's quite a few out there. I mean, there's the Belvin, there's the leadership value spiral, which is by
Coherence.
There's the leadership. There's a leadership circle. There's 360. There's various other ones out there. There's so many out there, and I think some of them you can even get free on a trial basis as well. So doing something like that is really helpful, because it gives you like a starting point, especially if you don't know, if you're unsure of what you want to do. But yeah, we've done various other things as well. We've done some mapping as an organization. We've even developed our own one based around well-being, because of the type of school that we are, based on the Prosper framework. So I think that it's making sure that there's really good self-awareness, and building that self-awareness in yourself, and helping your team to build self-awareness, and the people that you work with. That's really important.
I recall during headship I remember just at times being able to sit with the team and be quite vulnerable. And so on Fridays we would have conversations about the week, and also, as quite sort of superficial a conversation. A young person was really upset, and I was really worried about them. Really important things, absolutely really important things. But by being able to really listen and to ask really important questions, and to be able to develop that in a safe circle, meant that actually we were able to hear why they found that particularly difficult, why that was a poignant moment. And actually what we started noticing is that everyone came in feeling really like glum about something that happened during the week. And that was the first thing they reeled out, that we had almost reframed how to have that conversation by acknowledging, actually coming with all these worries and concerns, all the rest of it, because we almost have fallen into this rescuer role, and actually reframing that and changing that and doing that quite strategically on a Friday, so that people left that role at the door at school, and they could then go off and be whoever and whatever they wanted to be over the weekend. Was really powerful. But to build the culture of feeling safe, to offer and feel comfortable with the language, and to offer that challenge to language around that, I think is so important, because what then happens is that ripple effect. If you have that security and safety with leaders, if you have that safety where you can feel that you could be vulnerable and share your self-awareness, but also be open to hear your blind spots. We all have them. We're human. That's what they're there to keep us, and we hope to build that sense of awareness around that. It's just finding that time to do that, still keeping on task and all those other things that are wonderful. But actually, I think you can do that really well if you invest that time and enable that security and safety for others to do that with you, and you build that sense of unity, that sense of shared purpose and direction and care, sincere care.
And then that meaningful contribution that you can make to within that organization, being able to benefits the team as a whole, and guides your personal development alongside. That, I think, is key to harnessing your power as a leader, but also in supporting your team in harnessing their power as well.
Love that. So important, because it does take a village. It does take everyone's hand, doesn't it, to do that. And actually, egos aside, it's not about roles and titles. It's about the purpose of being in that building at that point in time. Beautiful. I really, really like that, Nazya.
So on a micro level, so what can we do for ourselves that help us harness our power? So you mentioned something earlier about acknowledging and appreciating.
Yes, and so declaring your ambition, because actually, like I said, we are so used to fulfilling this title that becomes a whole entire identity, and that's not factual. It's a part, but there's a lot of your own experiences and thought processes and so on and so forth that can change that narrative. I think advocating for yourself and others and being able to do that comfortably, and that comes from that shared language. It comes from being able to have the safe spaces for those conversations. Asking for help when you need it. We don't really always need the answers, but you just need to feel that you have some really secure relationships that will offer you direction, that will offer you the space, or even a question to help you get through the next step. Because sometimes, like you say, things are really muddy and you just need a little bit of clarity. And I'm coming back to what you shared right at the beginning, which is acknowledging your fears. That's hard work. That is really hard work. But once you do that, there's something really magical that happens at that point in time, because you're aware of it, you're consciously aware of it. You will then not enable it to become an unconscious bias. You enable it to become something that you consciously use as your power. So it's in there somewhere, and it may not feel comfortable to begin with, but putting it down and sitting with it, and allowing yourself to ride those motions and those feelings with that is really, really important. And I think the other thing is to practice self-care. I know you love a good facial. I love having a massage and some time away, walking in sort of in nature. All these small nuggets that just take you away for a short period of time is so important. But I know it's really tricky to do when it's been a really hard day.
Can we? I'd love to go back and actually talk about some of the ones that you mentioned. So one of the ones which you talked about was, acknowledging your ambitions and your achievements. That is such a major thing that helps us harness our power. That's what I believe anyway. I've noticed, and I'm more aware of it now than I have ever been. Before, I'd say maybe in the last 12, 13, 14 years.
Mm.
I've always had this thing about, we've got to stay humble. We've got to be modest about what we've achieved, because, and I think that part of that was like that the cultural element, that within the
I understand
Southeast
that.
Asian culture,
Mm.
you don't shout and scream about your accomplishments. You stay
Humble.
you stay humble and
Mm.
modest about them. But actually, over the last few years, especially after, like, I've had a couple of conversations with our CEO, and she said to me, she said, you know, you don't showcase what you do, Nazya. You don't really like tell, like, everyone knows, like the governors know what I've done, the trustees know what I've done, my friends know what I've done, but actually, to be honest, no one actually knows what I've done, what it has taken to set up a school.
Yeah, there's real grit, and there's tears, and there's hours, and actually there's sacrifice.
Yeah,
And actually that's something I do want to sort of talk to you about, and that's only if you feel comfortable talking about it, is that sacrifice. What did you have to give up, or feel like you had to give up to be able to make this setting successful?
Yeah. That's definitely a conversation for another time. What I will say is that acknowledging that sacrifice was the thing that I had to do. That was like a byproduct of
Sure.
me working towards that vision and that aim. But I will say is that one thing I have learned over the last few years, no, actually, I'd say not last few years, I'd say the last year or so, and is the fact that I need to acknowledge and be proud of my accomplishments and achievements, and I need to celebrate them, and that is part and parcel of me alleviating all the doubts I have about myself, because it's it's me harnessing my power. My power is my achievements, and the ability, the capacity and ability I have to succeed in what I set my mind to. So that is me harnessing my power, me finding my power. And one of the other elements was to do with, surrounding yourself with people that appreciate that. I think that is so important, because if you talk about your achievements and you talk about uh, um, your ambitions, but the people around you are really negative, or the people around you are just suck your energy, then then that just takes away from your power, and then it kind of brings in that self-doubt and that imposter syndrome easily slips
in. It really does. So being really mindful about who's around you and what you're sharing and when.
Yeah.
I am a huge believer of that, actually. It's almost safeguarding yourself, right? It's safeguarding yourself from the draining, from the energy vampires, and that's a very scary slope to go down. And actually, some people do not realize that they are being drained of their energy because of other people's wants and needs and so on and so forth. And actually, it's just, again, being really consciously aware of who you are and what you're achieving and the direction that you want to be going towards, and not dampening your achievements or the ambition that you have. Really, really interesting point there.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of discussions that's happened in the Twitter sphere, in the education space, and on on Facebook, and on LinkedIn, about allyship, about and there's some other terminology, some East London terminology, which is what is it? It's
Don't hold back.
no, something. Is it? I can't remember what it was. Something to do with finding your tribe or something. But it was said in a I don't know in what way, I can't remember. But yeah, it's like finding your tribe of people.
Sure.
Your the people that kind of help you. Like they
champion you.
Yeah,
they just want you to be happy, and you feel the energy. You feel that they have your best interest in heart,
and they celebrate your successes with you.
Yes, I love that. Yes,
and they celebrate your achievements with you. Yeah. So that helps you harness your power as well.
Sure.
Because what it does is it's not taking away your energy. It's like energy giving.
Absolutely.
Time, isn't it? It's like when you're sharing, when you're celebrating in the successes of others and your friends, that's very energy giving, not just to you but to them.
But I will also say there are times where you do feel alone, and some people don't have that. You know, they don't have that tribe. And when I say tribe, that tribe could just be one person. It could be your cat. It could be absolutely anybody that you just feel safe saying, do you know what? I did a really bloody good job today, and I'm chuffed with that choice that I made, or I'm so pleased that I finished that scheme of work. Because for somebody else, it's just a task, but for you, that's mammoth. That has taken hours, time, thought processes, and so on and so forth. So I think it's also knowing that you can build your tribe with people that you don't know. So it's seeking those coaches, it's seeking, forums and conferences, and going to be active in those places, to seek that. Because I think although we go and seek support and help when we're feeling low, it's also, why are we not seeking that support and that, like you said, that champion or your mate that's going to just be there for you to hear all the good stuff too. And I think that's the beauty in coaching and mentorship, something that I really, really enjoy doing. But I think it's that there is such value in that, and knowing that you can go back and share a milestone that feels good, and you're likely to carry that. That's such a lovely place to be.
Another thing that, I promise you, I don't take all my ideas from the kids. But another thing that we do is, even though kids do have an awful lot of good ideas, is acknowledging the good things in your life. Something that we do with our probably most of us do with our children. Something that most of us do with our students is gratitude.
Yes.
And acknowledging the good things in your life boosts the serotonin and dopamine and boosts your mood, and
your immunity.
Yeah.
And your immunity. So there's really significant data that talks about how the rise of cortisol and how you can obtain chronic illnesses and being able to manage that. So people are on, medication and so on and so forth because of the long-term cortisol levels that are sort of circulating in their bloodstream, in their bodies, and not being able to manage that. So actually being active to counter that by really thinking about the dopamine and serotonin and looking for those golden moments is really important. But also recognizing when you need to stop and say no more. No more is also showing self-care. It's also laying a boundary and saying, actually, this is a rational and fair place to be saying this and to be doing that for yourself, because you get caught up in being within a toxic or energy draining place.
Right. So we're gonna pause there. We're going to move on to the news, and we'll be back in a few moments.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
This show is brought to you in partnership with Jongchat Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! Visit jongcatbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
A report on the BBC website focuses on Ofsted's response to recent criticisms following the death of Ruth Perry. Ms Perry died while waiting for a report which downgraded her school. Ruth Perry's sister, Professor Julia Waters, wanted a full review to take place, but Ofsted has announced only some changes. Chief Inspector Amanda Spielman said the organisation would continue to listen to try to make improvements. She outlined the changes in a statement, and they include looking at how inspectors can return more quickly to schools who have work to do on safeguarding, otherwise performing well, in order to reflect improvements in their judgments, making the complaints process more responsive, which would see issues being addressed during inspection rather than afterwards, and holding briefings for head teachers where schools have not been inspected for a long time. In response, Professor Waters said the inspectorate was totally insensitive to the situation and was far from anything like a meaningful response to growing calls for reform. Education Secretary Gillian Keegan said standards on keeping children safe would not be watered down. The TES reports on concerns over school absence rates and the impact it could have on upcoming GCSE exams. Fears have been raised over the exam regulator's plan to return grade standards to pre-pandemic levels for the 2023 summer series, when a TES analysis reveals that absence is still 70% higher than before the COVID lockdowns. Year 11 students have missed 10.7% of sessions, equivalent of half a day at school, during the autumn and spring terms, according to DFE figures and FFT Data Lab information. The absence rate amongst disadvantaged Year 11 students is more than double that of their non-disadvantaged peers. Former Schools Minister and Chair of the Commons Education Select Committee, Robin Walker, said the findings were of a grave concern. Exam regulator Ofqual has promised some protection against any impact of COVID disruption to learning, but has not shared details. Despite a government drive on attendance, the objective to return attendance to normal pre-pandemic levels has not been met. School leaders and MAT CEOs have expressed concern at the lack of consideration being given to high absence rates. They also acknowledged that many had not anticipated the difficulties currently being faced. The Guardian featured an article on vaping and the concerns many have over the potential future impact on young people. With many schools acknowledging the difficulties they experience in dealing with vaping amongst children and young people, and research suggesting that pupils as young as 9 are admitting to vaping at least once, the article focuses on the downsides to what was initially presented as a more healthy alternative to smoking. The rise of the fruity vape flavours with enticing names such as Blueberry Blast have encouraged young people to believe they are harmless. According to some, they reduce your appetite, making them more enticing to some users. What isn't often talked about is the addictive element and the fact that many of the products, although not all, contain nicotine. Some youngsters who have never smoked have found themselves addicted to nicotine anyway. A recent study indicates that up to 15% of all 11 to 15-year-olds in the UK are now vaping, and the habit is proving just as difficult to kick as all other addictions, including smoking. Finally, many head teachers have called on Schools Minister Nick Gibb to drop what they describe as a misguided policy, which means schools must open for at least 32.5 hours per week. In a letter to the Minister, leaders of the two main head teachers' unions warn that since guidance on the proposal has not been provided, many have assumed it is not going ahead. The letter requests a minimum of a delay until September 2024. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Right, welcome back. So we've been talking about harnessing your power. So we've been giving our perspective on what it means to harness your power. We've spoken about it from a macro level, if as a leader or someone within a school, even with your colleagues, what you can do, and then from a micro level. So we've been that our last conversation was last bit of information we gave was linked to acknowledging and celebrating successes, surrounding yourself with people that make you feel good, and then also acknowledging the good things in your life by practicing gratitude. I want to add to that and say sleep. sleep is so important.
Oh my goodness.
I actually realized that over
sleep.
the Easter, when I realized the lack of sleep I'd had, and I spent a significant amount of time sleeping. And you know, even though at that moment in time I was absolutely exhausted, afterwards I just felt so much more better. My bags around my eyes were slightly less as well, and I've been doing a lot of research on sleep actually, and the reason why is because I've got an 18-year-old who is just an awful sleeper, and he's constantly got bags on his under his eyes, and I have a 12-year-old who is sleeping an awful lot.
Growth spurt maybe?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. So I just wanted them to like get some really good habits around sleeping. So I've been doing a lot of research around that. And sleep is one of the greatest performance enhancing drug you can ever have. Lack of sleep reduces cognitive capacity, rehabilitation, recovery, and it's so important to have a regular sleep, have a regular wake up time and a bedtime.
That circadian rhythm is incredibly important. Absolutely, yeah.
So that will help you if you've had enough sleep and you wake up refreshed. You're the decisions you make that day, and your mood and the energy enhancement that you have as a result will allow you to harness your power during the day.
Absolutely.
Because you've gained so much energy from a good night's sleep. So harnessing your power through good quality sleep can change the direction of your life, can change the decisions you make in your life.
Absolutely. But also I think whilst you share the importance of sleep, is thinking about what disrupts sleep. And actually coming back to the idea of acknowledgement. So acknowledging what disrupts sleep. So for you, what disrupts your sleep? So
I would definitely say having my phone near me disrupts my sleep.
Okay.
Seriously.
Yeah. So a huge rate of addiction around that is incredibly interesting in itself. The blue light and all of that jazz. But I think also it's worry.
Yeah.
That need of of what's going on in life or not going on, or
distraction
from
your thoughts.
And therefore you're not processing what's really going on, and your body's telling you, listen to me, hello, I'm here, I've got this data coming through, I don't quite like it, let's do something about it. And then you're back on Instagram, or you're back on whatever it may be, and what you're not doing is not processing, and you're not working through it, and you're not having or seeking the support that you need. So thinking about mental health and thinking about sleep, we often talk about this with our young people, but how often do we talk about this with our members of staff? Are we encouraging really good sleep patterns? Are we really thinking about workload? And we've seen the data, which is staggering. We'll talk about that in the next few sessions. But I think these are the things that keep practitioners awake, and therefore when they come into school, to be able to manage young people who also, a huge generalization here, by the way, who are probably not having the quality sleep that is required. You're walking into a system that's just not going to get what the outcomes we're looking for. So we have great dialogue around thriving and great dialogue around well-being, and all these wonderful sort of systems or processes or initiatives, but the core systems are actually sleep, removing yourself from distraction, the impact of the distractors and what happens, and then yet we then don't talk about it. It actually blows my mind a little bit. It really does.
So yeah, sleep is really important. I think if we have a good night's sleep, good quality sleep, that you are more able and capable of harnessing your power, making decisions when you're in the right frame of mind, and the decisions that you make will then more likely be from personal power rather than fear.
Do you know another thing, actually, having said that, this is for, families that have young people, that live with very, very young people, sort of newborns, toddlers, that sort of age range. And I remember having a conversation with a senior leader about the lack of sleep that I'm having, and just being able to share that and feel comfortable to say, I've had a rough night's sleep because they're teething, or, whatever it may be. just helped me to vocalize what was going on in my world, and then be able to share that with someone that really understood that. And straight away, I felt that I had lifted, because you've already woken up thinking, I haven't slept for this many hours, I feel a bit groggy or rough or whatever. But that simple act of kindness of listening made me feel that I could cope with that day better. And I think just again finding that and bringing these things to the table and sharing that, not for support, because that is the reality for many people. There are many young families, or carers and looked after children, whatever it may be, that's out there that are not sleeping very well, and that does impact the adults in their world. And those adults are going in to do really important work with other young children or young people. Are we bringing that now? Do we feel safe enough to have those conversations? And just like I said, be that kind listening ear. Sometimes it's just enough. It really is.
And my final kind of point I'd like to make about harnessing your power is about self-talk. How we talk to ourselves influences how we feel, which then influences our behavior. So, certain things that we can do around cognitive reframing of the language that we use with ourselves. So, avoiding absolutes, use it, like not saying, avoid saying never and always, because if you say, oh, I'm never on time, or I've always got this to do, or always I'm busy. I know my son that says this to me all the time. It's like, you're always telling me off. I mean, it's such an absolute, like, no, I'm not always telling you off. I tell you off sometimes, not always. But the thing is that that language and the intensity around that language can really, again, suck energy.
It's high demand,
yeah,
isn't it? It's high demand. It's saying, well, that's it, and that almost is self-fulfilling. So you're like, I am always eating, or always working, or like you say. But actually, how do we make that low demand? And actually, when you change that to a low demand language, what you're then saying is, I've got choice. And when you have choice, that sense of autonomy develops and enables you to feel freer, because what you're thinking about is that intrinsic motivation. It's not that external hard yes or no. It's actually, instead of never, I, like you said, I sometimes, or I often, or maybe I instead of saying I should, I get to.
Yeah.
I get to go for a walk today, or I get to go to a place of work where actually I really like.
It should be
parts.
Yeah. So I should be exercising. Is I choose to exercise.
Yeah, choosing to exercise for me.
Yeah. I should be marking books. Well, actually, on a Friday night. Well, actually, I'm choosing to mark these books. It gives you the power back.
And that's it. I really like that. So from harnessing your power and identifying it, also actively seeking ways to almost grab the power back, and where you can in those moments in time. Super stuff.
Right. Okay. So closing arguments around harnessing your power.
Oh,
your closing argument.
There is so much. I think one point. I think remain curious. For me, that's I absolutely love that one quality that I have. I think that's something that enables me to, when I am getting myself into a bit of a system, or a bit of a one track sort of thought process, is to just stop and say, hang on, am I really thinking about this? And am I reframing that, cognitively reframing that to, I'm going to think about this differently, or seek alternative perspectives. So for me, I think the term curiosity, or curious, it would be my word. How about you?
For me, I think it's one of the biggest things that really gives me energy, and is just like, it just brings so much into my life. Is me like having new experiences.
Nice.
And the thing is that I was thinking about this, is like, what power do I want to harness? And have you ever seen the movie Jumper?
No.
Right. And it's so the powers that they have superpowers, and the superpower is that they can jump from one place to the next.
Nice. Okay.
Right? And I was just thinking that if I could have,
I have an image, by the way, of you jumping from one place to another.
No, but it's like anywhere in the world you can jump.
Excellent.
You can jump to anywhere in the world, right?
Mate, that is
And
incredible.
so I was like, oh my goodness, that would be like my ultimate superpower is to like be able to say, yeah, I want to be there and just jump to there and just appear there. And so it's like I feel like my biggest lesson or my biggest kind of thinking point around harnessing my power is doing the things that I love doing. So the jumper point is important because I love traveling.
Yes.
And I need to do more of it because that's going to give me my power.
Yes.
You know, I should stop worrying about saving my pennies for a rainy day all the time. That is the thing that I'm always thinking of.
Yeah.
So just follow my gut. You know, my gut tells me, you know what, you should go away for a bit. I should follow my gut.
I hear you.
And I should seek those things that give me my power. Being creative, that gives me power. That gives me my energy. So I need to follow my gut and do things that give me my power back and give me the energy that I need.
I love that. So tell me, what do you wish you knew earlier? Based on this conversation, you know, think about 15 years ago, Nazya. What did you wish from, you know, what do you wish you knew?
Well, when I was like training to be a teacher.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. That's a good place to be.
I wish I knew I was taught how to fix a printer. I think that would solve, I would say that would probably solve like 25% of my energy levels.
Wow.
And during the school day.
Wow.
Imagine
I
that.
thought you were going to come up with something profound and like, but you know what? I can't knock you.
Isn't it energy sucking when the printer goes kaput when you need to print like 50 pages or something, or it's like the last minute of your PPA?
I'm really,
how energy sucking is that?
I'm all about, you know, climate and thinking about, you know, zero carbon and things like that. So no.
Okay. Well, it is honestly, that is, I wish we're all taught how to fix a printer, because I'm telling you, I think
it's a game changer, isn't it?
Teachers would be in a happier place.
Okay.
I'm doing this for all of teacher kind. Any ITTs trainers out there, please teach your early careers teachers or ITTs on how to fix a printer, how to put in a toner, how to shake the toner about just to get the last bits out of it.
Just stop. You're outrageous.
Honestly, I think, oh my goodness, I think that you're giving them a skill that'll give them energy, I'll tell you. Anyway, what about you?
How do I even recover from that? Like, I just don't even know. But I will go a little bit more serious than you, and I will say, for me, is being really okay with your authentic self. Like, I've really grown to love me. I really have. And it's taken me so long to think I'm all right and I'm doing all right and things are going well. You know, things are great and I'm enjoying this journey, and there's been so many great wins and also equally so many fails. And so learning to love me, learning to take those nuggets and not feel like they are defining. And I really wish I knew that, because I think I spent so much time worrying about what other people think and am I doing good enough, and you know, what if I don't pass this, and actually the young people tell you, they are so honest. They tell you when things aren't right. You know, you walk into a room and you're like, yeah, this isn't going the way it should be. You know, and I think actually they are really good litmus, more so than the adults that you might be working with. So I think it's just to be a lot more fearless around being my authentic self. So that's a little promise to myself that I'm going to keep at and keep doing.
Lovely, super. Right, so we'd want to end our show with our Serenity Sunday moment. And today's Serenity Sunday, something we want you to think about and possibly practice if you're not already doing so. If you are, make sure you take time out to do this. Is breathing. So breathing regulates the heart rate. And when you regulate the heart rate, that can regulate your nervous system. It sends and the the pace. It helps regulate all of the different systems within your body. So, like it calms if you've got any kind of gut issues or stomach problems, doing some good breathing techniques can help with that. We're not saying it's going to solve all medical issues, by the way.
It's a good place to
this
start.
This is not a disclaimer. This is a disclaimer around that. It's not going to solve all medical issues, but breathing really does help, and it does give energy. All of the oxygen that goes into your body then helps the blood flow.
Absolutely. The scientist does come out in me sometimes, that all that oxygen that's floating around, it's just wonderful stuff. But I think also it's doing that when you are realizing. So I like to use the analogy of a balloon, and during the day your balloon expands and it relaxes, and that is when you get to a point where your balloon may pop because you've just had so much going on during the day, or you have had a tough moment where someone's just said a statement that you don't possibly agree with or understand, or you're just a bit like, what's going on there, or traffic, whatever it may be. The breathing part is absolutely essential on those moments, because it just helps you to open up that prefrontal cortex and allow that rational thinking to seep in, and for you to take the moment and gain control of that thought process, take a step back and not feel like you have to be reactive. And I really wish I had started practicing breathing far earlier than when I have.
This is like intentional breathing technique.
In the day, taking 2 minutes at several points in the day, and actually it just helps you to think things through. It allows you to process information better, and it just gives you clarity and control on to enable you to be intentional, like we spoke about earlier today. I will leave with a quote, though. I will leave with a quote. So the quote tonight is...
Well, can I say my thing about breathing just before you end with the quote? Right. So something that we work with the students on is about the importance of breathing and using that as a technique to help them, stay calm and collected, especially when they feel anxious about something, or if they're going through a challenging moment. And what happens is that, when something happens that triggers you, it's called flipping the lid. So imagine like your prefrontal cortex kind of disconnects, and all your feelings rush in.
Yes.
Yeah, and so this is like the terminology that's used in trauma-informed practice, which is called, so it's that lid gets flipped, and the thing is that when the lid gets flipped, you need to have strategies or tools to put the lid back down.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that. Nice visual.
So one of the techniques that we specifically work with our students on is actually breathing skills. And what we actually talk about with them is the breathing. It's not just deep breathing or shallow breathing, it's rhythmic breathing. So that's what we focus on, that when you're breathing, just make sure it's steady and at the same pace. And when it's steady and at the same pace, that's when you start regulating your heart. And it might mean lots of deep breaths, or it might mean...
Before you get to the point of rhythmic,
So anyway, just thought I'd give my 2 pence on that.
That's really helpful. Right. Okay. So thank you so much for listening in today. It's been a real pleasure and a joy to be here. We will be back in 2 weeks' time. Not sure what we're going to be talking about, but we will let you know. And if there's anything that you would like for us to discuss further, please get in contact. So to end today's session, we're going to leave you with a quote. The sun never stops shining. Sometimes you just have to look beyond the clouds to see it. So I hope that gives you some warmth, some hope, and some moments to breathe and look beyond the clouds this week. Have a lovely week ahead.
Take care. See you soon. Bye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
This is